Hey, everybody. Welcome to our office hours once again, week four. And this week we're talking about something a little bit different. AI that guides, doesn't just tutor or teach. We've sort of been building up to this topic and we've touched on it in different ways in previous weeks. But we wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about and showing you how this actually works and giving you some ideas on how you can approach this method of extending your reach, scaling your engagement with students using Noodle Factory. So before we jump in, let me just ask you to do something kind of as a thought experiment. Think about the best teacher you ever had in your academic career. It could have been a long time ago, it could have been very recently, but think about somebody who really stood out for you as a teacher in your own life. Maybe not somebody who knew the most about a subject, maybe not the person with the most degrees, but really the one who actually helped you to understand something, even a subject or a topic or a principle that was very difficult to grasp. How did they do that? What was it that they did differently? And I know I'm leading the witness, because if you're a teacher, you probably have guessed the answer already. It's because likely that they didn't give you the answers. That doesn't do a whole lot for us, but they guided you. They used the Socratic method, asking you questions, knowing where you needed to go, and also knowing where you were at the moment, but helping you to work out the path between the two and to navigate the path between those two points in knowledge. Sometimes that probably meant slowing down a little bit on something that you thought you understood, but once you began to engage with that topic, you realized, I don't really know as much as I thought I did about this subject. Sometimes it might have meant noticing that you were lost even before you could form a question because you just didn't know what you didn't know. I mean, and when you think about it, that's what really good teaching does. It's not about answering every question, it's about guiding towards knowledge. Now, think about every AI tool that you've used to date. We're almost 4 years, we will be in a few months, 4 years from the point that ChatGPT was launched into the public domain. Think about all the tools since then that you've used. What do they do? Um, pardon me. They typically try to answer questions. There's a mistake that we often make. We're trying to use these tools still more like search than what they're actually meant to do. But assuming you're looking for an answer or an output, you ask the question, the tool answers, you ask again, you get another answer. And if you're doing your prompting well, you're narrowing down towards what you want. But many of the tools that we use today are often reactive. There's no sense that they know where we're supposed to be going, especially if we're using generative AI for knowledge building purposes. And certainly they don't have the context of where we are typically on that subject. So there may be either too basic information that's being shared, or maybe it's over our heads. But that gap between what the tool answers, uh, almost as if we're just looking for an answer machine, and what a tutor does or what a really good teacher does in guiding us, that's actually what we're going to look at today. How do we bridge that gap? And is there a way outside of human involvement that we can bridge that gap using generative AI tools? Well, if you've used Noodle Factory, hopefully you realize that that's really the purpose of the platform itself, is to try to bridge that gap. So let's take a look at exactly what it is we're talking about. Let me switch over to my browser here, and I'm in the educator view of Noodle Factory. I'm going to start there because that's really where it all begins for us. If we want to use the tool for teaching and to scale our teaching, we need to begin here. So you notice, and if you were with us last week, I used the same lesson example. In fact, I'll just switch over to the student view just for a minute. This is a subject that I teach to lots of different types of learners. It's around business value discovery. So it's a business-oriented course about how, for typically people who come from more of a technical background, how they can learn and understand and practice how to discover business value as opposed to technical solutions. So trying to get them to synthesize who they are as more of a technical person with a developing sense of what a business outcome or business solution might look like. So that's where we're going. Now, I've got this lesson divided up. It's this is in the basic setup process right now. So I've got this business value discovery module or course that's been set up, and I've assigned learning outcomes to that. I had a Word document with a bunch of learning outcomes. I dragged that in, and so I was able to create that from a document, as you see here. Actually, let me just make this a little bit bigger so you can see that. So I created that from a document. So that's already done. Within the individual lessons, so right now I have 3 lessons set up, one on understanding business value discovery, one on differentiating customer pain points, and a third on active listening. So for each one of these, I have a lesson plan. So the lesson plan is timed, but it's really meant to be self-directed. So I've timed it to be roughly 45 to 60 minutes. That might be a little bit long for learners who come in and are going to be using a tool, but because it's self-directed, it could be 45 minutes or it could be 5 minutes. It could be 2 hours or it could be 2 minutes. It's really up to the learner on what they need to do. So the lesson plan is really there as a roadmap for what eventually the student is going to do. So if I jump back over here to the student view, running ahead a little bit, you can see that each of these lessons, I've completed 2, but one is in progress, active listening. That's the one we're going to jump into today. So the only reason that I can have any sense of where the student is and to use AI that guides as opposed to just answering questions is because I have my lesson plan in place that is driven by these or guided by these learning outcomes. So if I jump over here to my active listening lesson, this is my 3rd module, and it's got all the things that in a classroom setting I would go through in a 60-minute module on this topic of active listening. So hopefully that gives you a sense of how the build happens. We're not just uploading content, although you can do that. I mean, you can just drag all of your content for a subject or a course or even a module in. But what we're doing here is we're defining a structure. There's a sequence of topics, learning outcomes for each one of those, and a path that we want students to move through. So in this case, I've got topic 1, 2, and 3, each with associated outcomes, but very importantly, lesson plans that go along with that. Now, as we'll see, that is, and I'm repeating myself, forgive me, but that is the difference between a tool that just answers questions, which is fine, and one that can guide the student. The AI in this case knows exactly where the student is going to end up. So if we jump back over here to the student view, and I'm in my business value discovery course that, in my mind, I'm taking this in a physical classroom somewhere. This is meant to augment what is happening in the classroom. So maybe I'm starting my lesson, my self-directed lesson on this topic, but I haven't asked any questions yet. There haven't been any questions that are answered. So I'll jump over here to business value discovery. So I can continue learning. I can jump right into one of these topics. In fact, I'll go ahead and do that with active listening. This is in progress. I'll jump back in, and you can see here there is an activity. If we have time, I'll take a look at that. That is an active listening role play that I can do with my voice. I can work with an avatar. But in this case, I'll just continue learning. And you can see I've already been doing a little bit of work in here on active listening. And Walter asks me, hey, Jim, should we pick up where we left off? So that's what I'll do. I'm going to pick up where we left off, and I'll ask Walter, I forgot what we were working on. Where should we start? So let Walter think that through. Now, all going to plan here. Walter knows where I am in my progress, and so Walter will suggest that we pick back up where we left off exactly, or potentially I need to review some areas that I didn't get, or I just need a little bit of work on. So now Walter's telling me, here's where we are. We're in active listening, and we're starting what's called reversing. That's a That's a subject or a topic, I should say, in this module. It's called the business switchback. And this is where a customer is trying to get us to talk features and functions before we all know why, the big why of what the business outcome is that the customer is looking for. So Walter's sharing with me the core idea. You can read this around if we jump straight to features, we might not know the motivation. And even if we give a correct answer, it might not be a complete answer because we're sort of selling ourselves short. We haven't really fully understood what it is we're trying to solve. So here we've got an example of what reversing looks like. And I'll say maybe to Walter that I'd like to practice this. Can we do that? And this is, I know because this is a course that I teach, this is in the module itself. I'm actually jumping ahead a little bit though. And let's see how Walter responds to me jumping ahead. If Walter's going to suggest that we go ahead and practice, and that's exactly what Walter's doing. In some cases, if I jump too far ahead, Walter might say, let's scale it back just a little bit. Now, the customer here in this case has said, and I'm not using my voice, I will turn that on. Do you support single sign-on? Now, here is where I have a chance to demonstrate my understanding of the subject, or I can get it wrong. And I'll just go ahead and get it wrong, and I'm going to use my voice. Yeah, absolutely. We support single sign-on, and I'd love to talk to you about some of the new features that we've got in our single sign-on solution. Now, if you, well, obviously got that wrong, you didn't understand my voice correctly, but if you, yeah, so Walter is now picking up on that. I went straight to an answer, went straight to a solution. What I need to do is to reverse. So anyway, point is not to teach you this particular subject, but to show you how Walter reacts when certain things are going on. So when we're getting guided through this short exchange, Walter knows where we were, and Walter's able to, even though I've jumped ahead and I have not demonstrated this skill correctly, Walter's able to bring me back on track. And notice here at the very end, Walter's using a Socratic question. What is my revised one-liner, my deflection, plus my reverse question? Because I've got some examples here, and Walter's trying to guide me back towards what the right answer is. So let me try that again. Yes, we do support single sign-on, but before we talk about that, let me get you to describe to me what are the sorts of things that you're trying to solve, or the problems or the issues that you're trying to solve using single sign-on. Oh, I don't think I have the right microphone selected. Let me just try that again with my other input. Yes, we absolutely do support single sign-on. But before we talk about how we use single sign-on, help me understand what are the sorts of things that you're looking to solve, the problems that you're trying to solve with a single sign-on solution. Okay, a little misspelling there. That's my Mac doing that. I'll go ahead and change this. Let's see how Walter reacts to that. I think I'm probably going to get some more positive feedback on this particular approach. Yeah, so nice. You did the reverse back and their motivation. Yeah, so that's the sort of thing now that we're going to continue down using this sort of Socratic approach. So now let's take a look at the progress that I'm making. So technically now I have completed that module in my insights. You can see here, and here's the feedback that I'm getting. Yep, my strengths, I'm willing to practice, to ask for guidance. Weaknesses, I still tend to default to answering with features before fully exploring the customer's underlying motivation. And there I can see my progress that I'm making. So that module is completed. All right. So hopefully that gives you a sense in just a small kind of a micro fashion about how having learning outcomes for the overall module and then having lesson plans for each of the individual topics, I'm able to really make sure that the students are getting done what they need to do in terms of moving towards the outcomes that I have prescribed for this course. And this in a small way, what we're showing you here is a kind of agentic approach to the use of this technology. That word agentic gets tossed around a lot. Unfortunately, it's turned into kind of a marketing term. But in practice, what it really means is that the AI has a goal. We've given it an outcome that we're looking for, and there's some autonomy that's given to the AI, in this case, in a teaching context, on how the AI responds to that input, and in this case, to guide a student somewhere towards the learning outcome. So the goal, in this case, is mastery in a subject. We want the student to understand the material, not just to get through the lesson. So this isn't about just ticking the boxes and getting to the point where the student is quote unquote done with the lesson, but it's about really making sure that the student understands and shows mastery in each of these discrete topics. So as you're probably aware, Benjamin Bloom spent his entire career on areas related to this very problem. And he found in what he called his 2 sigma problem that one-to-one tutoring was a much better solution to helping students move towards mastery in subjects. Obviously, back in the day, particularly in the 80s, where Bloom was doing a lot of the later research on the 2 sigma problem, economically, logistically, this just wasn't feasible to have every student given a high-quality one-to-one tutor. But now, with the appropriate use of AI technology, like you're just seeing here, we have the opportunity to give students the access that they need to a high-quality one-to-one tutor, even though it is technology. All right, so that should give you some ideas. We do have a resource that we're going to share with you. This week's resource is called the Mastery Learning Design Guide. It's a one-page framework that you will have as a download, and it will help you to map your course content into a sequence that any AI tutor can follow. We'd love for you to try this in Noodle Factory. It works whether you're using Noodle Factory or if you're thinking about any sort of structure that will work in a generative AI learning tool. So the key questions that this guide will ask you and that you should be thinking about more broadly is, well, what's the outcome for each topic? Just like you would do in normal lesson planning. What does the student need to know before they get there? What do they need to demonstrate? And how do we, even in this sort of AI moderated environment, assess whether or not learning is occurring? And then how will we know if over time that learning genuinely sticks, if they've genuinely understood and gained mastery in that topic? So there should be a QR code appearing on the screen. You can scan that. If you registered for this office hours, you'll get this on email after the session. But if somehow you made your way here and you didn't register, you can scan the QR code on the screen. You can also go to noodlefactory.ai if you'd like to try out Noodle Factory or look at any of the resources that we've created for these office hours that are really designed to be helpful in terms of using the broadest possible cross-section of generative AI tools that are available to you. Hopefully you're finding these short office hours sessions useful and helpful. Please continue to join us each week if you can. If there are other things that you would find interesting, maybe things that are troubling you related to AI and teaching and learning that we can explore in more of a hands-on way in Noodle Factory and in other places, please let us know. We'd love to take your guidance and your suggestions on that. Until next week, all the best. Take care.